you can't just tell people what to do or what's expected of them. You have to find a way to really effectively hold people accountable and have people hold themselves accountable.
Hello there. This is John Bernatovicz, your host of the HR Like a Boss podcast. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with a friend. I've embarked on a journey to get to know amazingly awesome HR and business professionals, and I'm trying to understand what it takes to do HR like a boss. Hello, and on today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Holley Peaseley. Holley and I connected through a mutual business relationship that our companies established just a few months ago. So Holley, welcome to the HR Like a Boss podcast.
Thanks, John. It's good to see you. Excited to be here.
So for those that don't know you, Holley, maybe share a little bit about your background and what your company does.
Yes, for sure. So I probably have a little bit of a different background than a lot of the folks that you have on this show. So I am the chief of staff of IDMe. IDMe is a rapidly growing tech company. We are a secure digital identity network, helping our 64 million members and counting secure and control their own identity online. Our vision is to build the identity layer of the internet, providing a secure digital identity network that upholds consumer privacy and accessibility. So as we continue to grow, and we're growing tremendously right now, we are continuing to kind of help the US evolve how we think about digital identity and continuing to work to create a portable digital identity for everyone that they can trust. And so as chief of staff at IDMe, my role is to function as essentially an extension of our CEO, Blake Hall, and to add capacity to key IDMe functions and teams at critical times to ensure successful execution on high priority tasks. And so this is kind of what led me to human resources at IDMe. And I've been really fortunate to get to work really closely with the HR team and really embed within this function quite deeply. IDMe has experienced exponential growth over the last year and a half. Our tech team alone has grown over 600% and counting. And HR is obviously incredibly important in supporting a company and its employees through large growth spurts like this. And so when I first joined IDMe back in June, Blake identified HR as a top priority for him, given this growth and the transformation that we're currently experiencing. And so I've had a lot of fun working, again, really closely with the team since then, core HR, rewards and learning and development, as well as talent acquisition.
Holley, I start all guests out with my question, high level, of how would you describe the purpose of human resources?
Yes. So for me, the way I think about human resources is that it's really the intersection point of company-wide and business objectives and business success with personal kind of individual developmental goals and success. It's this layer that kind of permeates all aspects of a company, all teams, all people, and really does drive that connection between the personal objectives and the company-wide objectives. There's obviously a lot of components to it across, rewards and HR systems and talent acquisition, onboarding, but it really does touch people throughout their entire life cycle through the company, from again, talent acquisition and onboarding to, promotions, developmental conversations, those personal growth moments, all the way through the end. And it's through that life cycle how it connects those people to enable further business goals and success is I think, kind of really what HR means.
As you've been part of this hyper growth at IDMe, what are you seeing as it relates to accountability around HR supporting your managers and employees?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question. Something that we believe deeply at IDMe is that culture is not just a set of beliefs, it's what you do. And obviously, kind of a core responsibility of HR is building and maintaining and instilling a culture in people, whether it's through, again, compensation or talent acquisition or, how employees interact with each other. And so when it comes to embracing accountability, I think that resonates really deeply with me, because you can't just tell people what to do or what's expected of them. You have to find a way to really effectively hold people accountable and have people hold themselves accountable. And so, in my opinion, it's, holding people accountable effectively is kind of a two-step process. I think part one of it is the communication of expectations and rules and roles and responsibilities. And so making that communication very clear and very upfront and transparent for people. And then I think the second big piece of embracing accountability is establishing efficient processes through effective cadences that provide managers and teams access to data and information regularly. A cultural value at ID.me is to communicate like a scientist. And so data is everything for us. And to the extent possible, anytime we're able to use data, rely on data, bring data into a conversation or a decision, we believe that that really drives results and increases the efficacy and the efficiency with which we do things. And so when it comes to holding people accountable, to the extent that we're able to provide access to data and transparency around data so that managers can see for themselves, how they're doing, what progress they're driving, what output they're yielding, and see for themselves, where they're going and how they're tracking against it, then they're actually empowered to hold themselves accountable as much as, any team or person or leader is holding them accountable. So I think that's kind of a big piece of it for us at ID.me.
So accountability to me has a lot of that expectation, the process, hiring the right people, but there's also the moment where you have to give that critical feedback, that constructive set of thoughts. So tell me about your experience and how you've been able to do that, maybe some of the instruction you might be given to your HR team to help managers do the same.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's no getting around it. Constructive feedback and tough feedback is hard. It's hard to give, it's hard to receive, and HR is the star of the show when it comes to hard conversations and having to ask the hard questions or give those hard conversations or the hard feedback. So I think in terms of giving feedback, again, I'll go back to a really important value at ID.me: communicate like a scientist. I think this really rings true when it comes to giving constructive feedback, to the extent that you're able to give the feedback as real time as possible. Don't let 3 months pass by the time you go back and tell someone they didn't meet expectations, but as real time as possible and with clear, tangible, objective examples. That not only allows people to actually really understand what you're talking about and leave no room for interpretation or gray area, make it very clear and easy to understand, but also easy for them to then go act on it. If they are able to understand what went wrong, they can then act on it better, and it's a better outcome for everyone involved. So communicating like a scientist when you're giving those hard conversations, I think makes them as effective as possible.
I'll get you out of here on this. Holley, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. So my last staple question is, how would you describe someone that does HR like a boss?
Yes, I love this question. So going back to the first question about, what does HR mean or what does HR do? And that it is that connection point between the business objectives and the personal objectives. To me, what HR like a boss means is finding a way to actually build that connection and drive that engagement in a way that's actually a true, connection point between personal and business objectives. I think these days we see a lot happening with perks and benefits. You put an arcade game in the office or give, free alcohol on Fridays and lots of things that maybe drive social connections, makes it feel more fun to be at the office, which is great. That's not to say it doesn't have a good positive impact, but to the extent that you are able to successfully, embed yourself within the business, you can then, have your employees live and feel that mission day in, day out. I think that's where the real magic happens. It's a reason I'm excited to be at ID.me. We're an extremely mission-focused company, and everyone across all teams, all levels knows, again, like who we are, why we're here. And so I think that is what keeps people at a company 10, 20, 30 years and drives them to succeed and makes them willing to give what it takes for the better of the team.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to be on today's show.
Thanks so much, John. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for checking out the HR Like a Boss podcast. If it resonates with you, please consider leaving a rating and review. And better yet, subscribe and share with a friend. Until next time, let's continue to aspire to do amazingly awesome HR.